At that point, I'm just going to drop it and conclude. Thank you for your time. I look forward to coming back in front of you at another time in the future to speak of the details of this project, if you will allow me such. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ellen DeFalco.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Council President, Aldermen, members of the press, and public. While the agenda for tonight's meeting is light, and Resolution 94 and soon to be Resolution 95 relate to inefficiencies of past practices, I bring your attention to another matter for your consideration. On or about March 1st of this year, the Office of Corporation Counsel for the City of Kingston was in possession of a lawsuit filed by CSEA and the City of Kingston Laboratory employees versus City of Kingston. On March 13th, the Council's Finance Committee went into executive session to discuss the lawsuit brought against the City, and upon reconvening, the Finance Committee approved authorizing a settlement between CSEA and the City of Kingston on behalf of Corporation Counsel. The approval of said committee report failed to include the financial impact. Intentionally or not, public funds are involved. Further, Resolution number 58, which ultimately passed by this council on Tuesday, April 2nd, also failed to include the financial impact of this settlement and the amount the taxpayers of the City of Kingston will be responsible for. The settlement amount was not made public until documented in a newspaper article on April 6th. The cost would not be in excess of $39,000 annually. Because the decision to approve the settlement involved public funds, the amount sought by the Kingston Laboratory employees should be included in the body of the passed resolution. If someone were to search for this in archived documents, they would be in a predicament. Further, I believe in the interest of transparency and open government that we've heard over and over again, and because it is your responsibility and duty as aldermen to protect the interests of the taxpayers of the city and guard our city's finances and budget, the resolution should be reconsidered at this Common Council meeting this evening. So according to your rules of order, under 6, reconsideration of motions or resolutions, sub 1, a motion to reconsider made for the purpose of correction of error in any ordinance or resolution shall be considered a privileged motion to any member and shall always be in order. I urge you to reconsider Resolution 58 of April 2nd. Now moving on, regarding Resolution number 90, which is a memorializing resolution to support universal rent stabilization, you know my sentiments about feel-good memorializing resolutions that don't give you any power, but tonight you will go on record advocating for change and being in support of the Assembly and Senate bills, which have already been on the floor in Albany numerous times. Did any of you read the Assembly Senate bills associated with this resolution? Each one has been active since 2017 in the Assembly and were either referred or died in the Senate. There must be a reason why these bills were not carried. I encourage each of you to do your homework. Until such a time these bills reach the Senate floor, it is premature to even speculate what the outcome might be. None of these bills mention the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974, which has been amended several times, would cover other New York counties other than affected in New York City, Nassau, Westchester, and Rockland counties. Yet you are hopeful a bill will be carried to eliminate the 8 counties and allow local governments to address their own costs of rental properties and protect and provide rental rights. You should ask yourselves, are we, Ulster County, ready to accept more people being sent here on a one-way bus ticket and a bottle of water? Are we ready to have a city-controlled board to protect tenant rights? Your response should be absolutely not. If you were to further educate yourselves on these Assembly Senate bills, read the USA Today article of November 21st of last year. The gist, according to the author, rent-regulated apartments should be protected to ensure there isn't a housing crisis. Tenants will be pushed out of their communities because they won't be able to afford to pay their rents. Rent stabilization programs need to stay in place because they work. Thank you.
Thank you. I was probably a little remiss in the beginning. The council only set aside 30 minutes for this public speaking, so if you could keep your comments to 3 to 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Fran Petrillo.
Hi. Fran Petrillo, Ulster County Tourism. Thanks for the opportunity this evening to speak. The county and the city are in a contract that existed before I came to the county. But the contract goal is for the visitor center at 20 Broadway to be open Monday through Friday, and then Sunday through Saturday, May through October. So we used to cover the caboose. We don't have the caboose anymore, so it's all 20 Broadway, the Kingston Heritage Visitor Center. That's where Ulster County Tourism is housed. So May through October, Saturday and Sunday, we keep the visitor center open 11 to 5, Saturday and Sunday with volunteers. It's the only way we can kind of exist. So we had a volunteer that his sole purpose was to be at the center, and he didn't have a car, and those were 2 good factors. We don't have that volunteer anymore, so I've spent the last 4 months trying to gather volunteers. It's actually a big challenge these days. People don't want to give of their time. So we opened last weekend, May 4th, and we're open through October, Saturday and Sunday. So I just made it to last weekend with 1 volunteer per shift. It's 11 to 2, 2 to 5, Saturday and Sunday. So we opened last weekend. I have 1 volunteer for every shift. I'd prefer 2 in the perfect world, and I'm still working on that, but thankfully I have a person willing to volunteer so that we're open Saturday and Sunday. So many of these volunteers are seniors. So there's supposed to be city volunteers, but there isn't currently a pool of volunteers to draw from. So for the last 4 months, I've been working with senior centers, libraries, Office for the Aging to get the volunteers. And each one of them has asked me, what about the parking? So it was a huge challenge to get, I hate to say bodies in each time slot, but to then have a parking spot for them so that they can, a lot of them have walking challenges, and the handicap spots are full, the parking lots are full, the metered spots are full, and at the same time they're volunteering. A lot of them don't have cell phones, a lot of them don't have whoosh, and they say, oh, is it like a quarter an hour? It's not. So they're volunteering their time to keep the Kingston Heritage Visitor Center open. So my thinking was, and you're probably aware of this, that if there could be 2 spots designated in the municipal lot adjacent to the visitor center, so that the 11 to 2 person is going to be in that spot when the 2 to 5 person arrives, that there could be 2 spots, just 11 to 5 Saturday and Sunday. So that, because, and I've experienced this in the past, if a volunteer shows up at 2 o'clock, and I was just downtown last weekend to make sure that every shift was functioning, and it was raining, and yet there was still no parking, and I'm able-bodied, I parked far, I walked, no problem for me, but our volunteers is what I'm concerned about. So when they show up at 2 and there's no parking for them, they're gonna go home, and then the visitor center is not gonna be open. So, and that's a big concern. So if there could be 2 spots. So I know a concern, if I'm not mistaken, was that the downtown businesses, it'd be 2 less spots on Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 5, for their patrons. So I spoke to as many downtown businesses in this past week that I could. I spoke to Hudson River Cruises, Facets of the Earth, New Leaf Holistic Health, Savona's, Mariners, Cloven Creek, Golden Ginza, and any of those businesses are 100% behind the visitor center being open and having these 2 spots for them. Because they understand the value between their customers coming in and getting information and how much more welcoming it is if the visitor center is actually open. So my request on behalf of the contract between the city and the county is if we could have 2 spots on Saturday and Sunday in the municipal lot from 11 to 5 for the volunteers, so the visitor center could be open. That would be the ideal.
Fran, could you just send me a letter requesting that, and then I'll put it in committee and have the aldermen discuss it?
A new letter?
Yeah,
Because
just
I sent a
requesting that information or that spot,
Okay.
and address it to me, and then I'll put it in committee for you.
Okay. All right. Steve. Steve has a...
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
We do have a letter from her already,
Oh, okay.
being
Good.
addressed by
Thank
Public
you.
Safety.
Good, never mind.
Thank you so much, because, yeah, I put something together already. So, and I did talk to the downtown businesses, and they are 100% behind it, the businesses that I have spoken to, which was the majority of the ones that would be affected by this. So they understand it's 2 less spots during that time frame, but they also are 100% behind the fact that the visitor center be open. So I thank you for your time.
Okay, and we'll reach out to you and let you know when the date of the
Thank you
meeting
very
is,
much.
if you want to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Brad Will.
Good evening, Brad Will, Main Street in Ward 3. Nice to see you with your new audio system. I'm wanting to just register my appeal and observations on the proposed road realignment and green space creation at the Broadway and Grand Street intersection. It kind of caught me by surprise. I admit I wasn't following it very closely, but a couple of months ago it showed up in a Daily Freeman, and it kind of piqued my curiosity, so I started looking at it. And you know, what I'm finding is that I have real questions about the wisdom of doing this road realignment and creating these small green spaces. I know that Assemblyman Kevin Cahill has secured some monies for this, which is great. I do feel that maybe that money could be spent elsewhere to improve our current parks, for instance. But in this case, in this location, I think it's not really achieving what it may be desiring to achieve, which is to unsnarl some traffic there. So I did take a look at the Broadway traffic studies that GPI did a couple of years ago, 2016, 2017. And they studied all of the intersections along the Broadway, street improvement plan that's going to be taking place next year, I understand. And it's interesting because the Grand Street, Prince Street, Broadway intersection doesn't have any a lower mark or grade than several other intersections along Broadway, and they recommended some signalization improvements that would cost about $175,000 each, like 3 other intersections. So if that can fix the problem where it's not rated any worse than those other 3 intersections at Broadway, I don't see how it warrants a big, heavy move like a road reorientation. So that's one aspect of it. And the green space that would be created in there would pretty much remove 24 parking spaces out of that intersection to create these very small parks or green spaces, whatever you want to call them, that might not really be utilized that much in the end. And it will subordinate Grand Avenue, Grand Street to Prince Street, and so people have to turn from that longer street to get onto and off of Broadway. So I'm not sure it's really achieving a lot by straightening out that intersection in the way it seems like it feels like it's a foregone conclusion, and I hope that's not the case. So in looking at it, I'm thinking that there's the Planet Wings commercial parcel, and when I looked at it a little closer, I found that it could accommodate a fairly substantial structure, and that could be sort of a gateway anchor to Midtown, where it's a very high-profile site, and I think it'd be unfortunate to condemn it by going through this road reorientation. So, just a few statistics that are, have some speculation. But if that space, that parcel were to be developed, it could generate between $2 and $3 million in collected tax revenues over the course of 20 years. If it was fully built out, you could have ground floor, sidewalk level, restaurant, retail, 20 parking spaces. You could have 2 stories of rental housing, affordable and market rate housing above that. You could have solar PV on the roof. You could have a vegetable garden on the roof. You could have nice units with balconies. I think a lot could be achieved there. And you could retain the 4 spaces that are in front of the Millard building, which I think the tenants of Millard would probably appreciate. So, I guess I'm just appealing for further study before a decision is made. The city could potentially go forward with the purchase and then work with a developer. Take down the Planet Wings building. It's a nothing structure, and kind of set the table at that site for a developer to come in and take advantage of NYSERDA grants, low-income housing tax credits for the affordable units. That development would also create jobs at the commercial entities at the ground floor and housing for, I calculate, up to 20 families or individuals or couples. So I think it could be it's an opportunity to create a beautiful new building where the post office, of course, stood and was unfortunately demolished, and really create something that's positive for the future of Kingston, rather than just kind of condemning it for a tiny patch of green. We have wonderful parks already, so why don't we put some money in there and take a fresh look at this parcel. So I'm going to just hand this in, and if anybody wants copies of my data, they can request it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Alex, we're going to ask you to pronounce your name for us.
Hello. So I'm here to talk about the rent control memorializing resolution. I helped start the Kingston Tenants Union. I'm also part of Mid-Hudson Valley Democratic Socialists. And I'm here, you might be wondering, like, why are all these groups popping up in Kingston? We have DSA, Rise Up Kingston, Nobody Leaves Mid-Hudson, Kingston Tenants Union. Why are all these groups popping up? It's because there's a lot of alienation happening right now in the community. Our community is 55% renters, and when they look at what's happening in City Hall and the things that are coming through, they're all great quality of life things, like really nice new housing, murals, bike lanes, parks being made, lots of investment and interest. But if you're a renter, that means that property values are going up, and taxes are going up, and rents are going up. And when you're a renter, you don't make you can't make any money off of your rent going up. It's a negative. It actually costs more money. So tonight's memorializing resolution sends a message to the state that in our current situation, we need drastic changes to preserve our community. So a couple of the myths that I wanted to talk about that I've kind of heard in the local discussion about rent control. The first one's about how we need to preserve a friendly environment for development. So I just talked about how alienated a lot of people in the community are. And I'll say that it's going to be really hard to make any new development happen in our city when people are afraid that the next development is going to displace them. Already in Uptown Kingston, the Catskill Art Supply building, the storefront, is renting for $9,000 a month in anticipation of the new development. And that's a ridiculous example, but it's emblematic of what happens when new development comes in. The surrounding area, the rents go up. So rent control would help with that for residential people. The second one that I've heard is that under rent control, landlords won't make repairs. They already aren't. So you know, landlords already, especially in the lower end, do not have an incentive to make repairs. They'll let the property go as long as possible without any reproach. So under rent control, at least the prices will stay down because they already are not making repairs. And that can be a separate issue. Another issue about, you know, landlords are saying that the rents are going up because the taxes keep going up. We've tried it the other way for a really long time. Taxes keep going up because property values keep going up, because it's possible, you know, the assessed value is based on the market. And when the market is saying that, oh, you're renting this place for $1,500 right now, but you can actually get $2,000 for it, that leads to a higher assessment, which leads to higher rents. So rent control is finally a way to say no, like the value of this property does not need to keep going up by so much every year. Maybe it should just go up by 3 or 5% a year. It creates just a more stable environment for that. And then the final myth I've heard is that we already have enough affordable housing. So I think that's rooted in a lot of stuff, but the thing to keep in mind is under rent control, we actually wouldn't need to build as much new affordable housing. We could just build housing and it would stay affordable because it would have some controls on the prices. The market wouldn't be going so crazy. So once again, I just want to say, like, there are a lot of groups popping up in Kingston. A lot of people have been in Kingston for a long time. They like the sense of community. They like the sense of stability and knowing who your neighbors are. But what's happening with all the prices right now going up so much, there's just going to be some wild swings in the community. And I really, there are a lot of good things going on. I do not want reactionary politics to take over in Kingston where everyone's just really alienated and angry. I'd really like everyone to work together like they seem to have for a long time. So I think rent control can fit into that, and I hope you guys support the full thing, not just the ETPA, but also good cause eviction. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Juanita Amador.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for holding this meeting, and thank you for allowing me to speak. As you know, my name is Juanita Amador, and I am the founder of the Kingston's Tenant Union. I've been fighting for just cause evictions and for stronger tenant protections. I have been fighting against the E&M management property that you have within Kingston, as well as in Ulster, as well down in Lopez. This is a company that has came in here and has disrupted many tenants' lives. As I stand before you today, I am now actually homeless, okay? Actually homeless because of E&M management. I lived in an apartment with sewer, non-repairs for over a year. And I've been speaking out about it ever since. And because we have no cause evictions up here, I was evicted from my home. But even though I had every right to be there because they were doing everything wrong. no repairs, threatenings. I have everything, all the evidence, and the judge would not even hear it in court. There is no protections for tenants here in Kingston. And to be lucky today, I am. Because I've been to every agency trying to help, because I have money to go get an apartment, yeah, in a house. I'm one of the luckier ones. But when you had to go put down the money, first month, last month, security, 1.5 months, you're talking over $10,000 or $5,000, depending on where you're at. And the rents are so high lately, it's a lot of money. But God gave me a God posse, and if everybody thought I'm leaving Kingston, I'm sorry, like my pastor said, I'm grounded and rooted up here in Kingston. So thank God I am able to move in tomorrow to a place, but there are many who do not have that luxury. Because when I went to the agencies today, what they put the person through is so deplorable, it makes you inhumane. It makes you feel like you're begging someone to help you, and you're not asking or begging for something that is not there. The grants are there to help. I paid my taxes all my life. I still work, I still pay taxes. Our tax dollars are the ones that put up these for DSS. That's what puts out the money. But when you go there and you can't get the help, they told me that what they can do for me is they can take my $2,000 that I had for security, and they will put me up in a shelter. And then when that ran out, then they'll take care of me. When all I was asking was for one month's rent so I can move in to my place. That does not make sense. If the person has something and they're just looking to help them move, that should be needed. Tenant needs protections. Tenants are going without repairs. I have a number of tenants that I can show pictures of that they're living in deplorable conditions. I have gone to the Common Council many times. I have shown you different little, gave you like alphabet soup. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, we can put in, we can implement that will help tenants here. Just cause evictions is one of them. So I'm asking, not as a favor, because I'm not asking for favors because of our income or because of our color, our race, or who we are. Okay? We are human beings. Tenants are human. And to be honest with you, a dog actually will get more care faster than a human being does here in Ulster County, because I've seen it. When someone became homeless, they were quick to put the dog up in a shelter, make sure the dog was fed and cared for, and got to the animal hospital to make sure it was okay while the person was still sitting on the street. That does not make no sense to me. And yes, the rents are high up in here. I mean, there is no kind of rent stabilization or some kind of programs here in Ulster County to help residents who are making less than $15 an hour. And if you look at what your people make here in Ulster County, Walmart is $11.75. Steward's is $12.75. People are not making a living wage to live here. But actually, these are the working class people, working class poor, that has actually been building Kingston. Most of them could be your janitors that work here in City Hall. It can be your guys who are checking the meters. Are they making more than $20 an hour to live here in Kingston? I don't think that's what the city pays anyone. But yet, the rents want to go up. You're not going to give them just cause evictions. Landlords can do whatever they want, let you live in filth or non-repairs, and it's okay. I don't think that is right. So I'm still going to stand here, and I'm going to be fighting for just cause evictions to come here in Kingston, and for tenant protections, because they do need it. And I thank you for your time. And if you need any more copies, oh, just another fact. Security deposit wasn't returned to me. That's another thing that does not happen in Kingston, Ulster, or in Lopez. No tenant gets their security deposit back. And I did nothing wrong in my apartment not to get mine back. So that left me handicapped to go and look for an agency to help me move into another apartment, because if I would have gotten my security back, I wouldn't have to ask anyone for anything. So, like I said, please consider the just cause evictions or some kind of policy, regulation that can be passed within the city of Kingston to help a tenant. I thank you for your time. Good evening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Joseph DeFalco.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Council President. Joseph DeFalco. I live in Ward 3. All right, it's a tough act to follow some of these comments tonight, but I'll just skirt on a few of them. Again, Corruption Council taking committees and councils into backdoor, closed door, illegal meetings, constantly. And this here a housing issue. It was established that Kingston hosts 39% of affordable housing and building more. This is what's going up on Cedar Street, 90 apartments. What's going on at the Arms House, 110 apartments and 60 more in the building they're going to build. What does that do to the balance of percentages of affordable housing to housing? Does it make it 50%? If it's already 39%. How much percentage of affordable housing does a municipality of 23,000 people have to host? People get displaced from wherever they come from. They come to Kingston. They can't find housing, and then demand. They don't ask. I attended meetings, and this was they demanded housing. That's disgraceful. Our third ward alderman hosts a meeting on a 5-year plan for Kingston of landlord-tenant relationships. And after every meeting, he allowed public interjection for 3 minutes to ask questions to the guests or whomever he stacked the deck with. So I attended the meeting with the developers. Only one developer showed up, Kevin O'Connor from Rubco. And I want to go on to question. He was building East Square. And I was told I couldn't ask any questions because it was closed just for the council meetings. But after the meeting, you could have an opportunity to ask a question. Well, I was denied that opportunity because after the meeting, adjourned the meeting, and they want to run out the door. And I said, well, just a minute, don't I have an opportunity to ask a question? I mean, at every other meeting this man hosted, he allowed public interjection. But when I wanted to ask Kevin O'Connor questions, that didn't happen. I wanted to ask him, when he proposed this project, he proposed it with local contractors. How many local contractors did he have on the job? 1. Crazy. I want to ask him, when you propose the mission, and you get permission and the benefits of moving forward, and then you deviate from the mission. He permanently denied deviating from this mission on Cedar Street. I have documentation that he did deviate from the mission on Cedar Street. So if he deviates from the mission, then the proposal should change. I mean, you have no authority to stop him, to claw him back, bring him before the board again, and renegotiate the proposal. I mean, I could say a few things that would start trouble in this room, okay? About people coming to this board and asking for assistance. But I'm going to keep that reserved because I think it wouldn't sit well and we'd have problems in this room, okay? And I don't agree with what I see happening here. You all have your back to what's going on the floor here because you're pledging the allegiance to the flag. You cannot see what's happening here, okay? I can say this. If you disrespect the flag and you have no allegiance to this country, you shouldn't come and ask for anything and hold your hand out for anything. If you can't find housing, move on. Talk about the assessments. They sent out your assessor to target certain areas and certain individuals with assessed values. Make an excuse, oh, the rents went up, your assessment's going up. Well, your assessment went up first, and then your rents went up. This is a smoke and mirrors game you're playing to get the money to afford to pay for a budget that's been going up $1 million a year, and then getting the opportunity to say, well, I haven't raised taxes. If you haven't raised taxes, you've collected more money because you're paying for a budget that went up $1 million. I'm going to tell you once again, you cooked up the 717 budget, and that's why you have $7.5 million in the unassigned fund balance, and you can't spend it quick enough to hide it. And they were discussing, I just heard the discussion about the interchange on Grand Street and Broadway, where Chicken Wings is. I don't know if they're aware that that was the least prone intersection for accidents. The least. I don't care what anyone says because we have the documentation from DOT, from the county, from everywhere. That intersection is the least. And it occurs to me, if you look across the street at Pine Grove Avenue, you move the tree and you move the island, you'll be lining up Grand Street with Pine Grove Avenue with a fraction of the cost. And you don't have to take something off the tax rolls. And to create a park that nobody will use, because last month it was mentioned here that nobody uses the fire department park uptown Kingston. And someone had to justify it and say, yes, it did. They do. Well, absolutely not. They don't. Because I've been monitoring that park morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week. Nobody uses that park. And if you say somebody uses that park, you're not telling the truth. And it'll be the same thing there. You'll be creating a park that nobody's going to use. And you're going to spend over $1 million because you just spent $500,000 for the property. And hopefully you're going to get $750,000 grant from Kevin.
Assemblyman Cahill.
Okay, but you're not going to get the money. And that's just the beginning. And then you have to spend more money. I'm not going to go away. I'm going to be back here again. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Fox Green.
Hi there. I'm Fox Green. I'm here with Kingston Tenants Union, one of the co-founders of Kingston Tenants Union. So most of us are aware that we have a housing crisis in Kingston. We cannot effectively tackle this crisis by only using a top-down approach. We also need to work from the bottom up to solidify our foundation to ensure that we can maintain and retain a strong, diverse community. And by community, I mean the people who are here now, supporting our economy, bagging our groceries, driving our Ubers, serving our lattes, who are struggling while those at the top continue to thrive. We have a government to serve the needs of everyone, not the few, and that's why I'm asking you to support rent control and good cause eviction laws.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Diana Lopez.
Good evening to all. My name is Diana Lopez, and I'm the organizer for Nobody Leaves Mid-Hudson. I live at 38 Stephon Street. I am here tonight in support of the memorialized resolution for rent stabilization. A lot of our members come to us and say they can't find a place to live because they ask for Social Security deposit, first month's rent, last month's rent, and they also have to fill out an application, which they charge like $50 per adult to fill out. And so that makes a really hard hardship for them to find housing. My parents right now are living in a 3-bedroom house paying around $2,000 a month. And when the landlord decides, he just raises up the rent for them. So it's very important that you guys could pass this resolution for rent stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rashida Tyler.
Thank you. My name is Rashida Tyler. I'm a community activist with Citizen Action of New York and with the Kingston Tenants Union. And tonight I'm speaking in support of the memorializing resolution on rent control and good cause eviction. Our community is glad that the City Council is taking up such an important issue that impacts not only the residents of this town, but tenants statewide. Right here in Kingston, homeless people are not being shipped in. They're our workers. They work here in Kingston. They're the people who have been from the community. You know, I hate to break the news. There is no midnight bus that lets off homeless people in Kingston. It comes from forces that we wish we could ignore. There are increasing housing costs while there are stagnant wages. And that's something that we in Kingston, as much as we want to, you know, maybe ignore it, we can't. And that is a combination for homelessness and for poverty. So by taking action tonight, the Common Council is actually keeping pace with the reality that many people in our city and our state are facing. So thank you for doing that. So we need more of our legislators to be responsive to the community, to the needs of our everyday people who are having families, raising their families, just trying to live in this Kingston that we want to thrive. And this memorializing resolution, it will help to do just that, because it will send a signal to officials on the state level that this is a desirable direction that we want our community to go in. And good cause eviction, one of the principles under consideration in addition to rent control, it promotes neighborhood investment. It promotes family stability. It prevents retaliatory evictions. And it will be one way that we can work toward a more equitable city that everyone can stay and afford to share in. So in Kingston alone, last year, evictions rose by over 50%. We are not immune to the forces that are outside of our city. We are directly impacted by them. The ETPA and Good Cause have been stuck in limbo in Albany for many years. Yes, but not because there's anything innately wrong with the legislation. It's because there's humans at play. There's politics at play. We have a different state legislature this year, and we are taking action on the state level as well as on the local. So we are fortunate in that we have a common council that is acting as many New Yorkers, over 2,000 New Yorkers, actually are going to gather on May 14th in Albany to bring our voices to Albany. But here on the local level, we are keeping pace and we are acting in accordance with what the reality people are living. The rent is too high. It's unaffordable. It's unsustainable. If our city wants to grow and have a labor force at all different levels, then we have to have housing available to people at all different levels. And while this isn't proposing new development, it is preventing displacement. And so people will be able to stay in their homes longer and be able to afford to live where they work. Corporate landlords are increasingly coming into Kingston. They are buying up housing stock and they are refusing to renew leases, exacerbating homelessness. Juanita just spoke to this right now. Again, this is not someone who was bussed in. This is someone from our community right here. ETPA can actually curb speculation, which we know helped to lead to the financial crisis. So if we want our community to not only people to buy homes in our community and there to be available housing stock, then we have to take action. ETPA can help with that. And if people cannot, think that this is difficult, they're right. But doing the right thing typically is difficult. We have an 8-hour workday because it was difficult, but someone undertook the work. We have civil rights because it was difficult, but people undertook the work. So right now, tonight, our Common Council, you're undertaking difficult work, but it is necessary for Kingston's future. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public speaking portion. Did you not sign up? I did not sign up. Okay. Sure. Keep it short, please. Is there anyone else out there? Okay.
James Shaughnessy, Delta Place in Ward 3. I was at the April 10th Planning Board meeting, and I heard there, as well as one of the speakers here, talking about the proposed rent of $9,000 a month at the Catskill Art Building on Wall Street. I thought about that after the planning meeting. That was recently sold for $895,000. So $9,000 a month rent is not unreasonable for the investment that the new property owner has in it. And as all of these buildings along Wall Street and North Front Street, as they sell for $1 million a piece or more, the rents are going to be astronomical, and I don't know how those retail establishments are going to be able to afford it. I don't think that very many retail establishments up there could afford a tripling of their rent right now, and that's what will happen. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We now declare the public speaking portion of the meeting concluded. We now move to claims and communications. Hearing no discussion, they'll be on file in the clerk's office. Can I get a motion to dispense with the second reading of general bills and pay same?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is the bills are paid 9-0. We now go to report of committees. Resolution number 88.
Resolution 88 of 2019. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for modifications to the 2019 Comptroller's budget.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted, 9-0. We now go to resolution number 89.
Resolution 89 of 2019. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for the use of $100,000 from the Recreation Trust Fund Reserve to pay for Parks capital projects as requested by the Mayor, as well as a 2019 budgetary transfer of said funds.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted, 9-0. We now go to resolution number 90.
Resolution 90 of 2019. resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, to adopt a memorializing resolution to support universal rent stabilization as per attached.
On the question. Hearing no discussion, Alderman O'Reilly, late hand.
Thank you. My speaker's working, but it's fine. I have a loud voice.
Okay.
Yeah, please. It's not working. Oh, you got it, Tom? It won't be on record.
If the green light comes on, it's working.
Hello? Hello? Okay, thank you.
Baby, there you go.
Okay. Thought a lot about this rent stabilization, rent control issue. We're in a housing crisis. So what do when you need more housing? You got to build more housing. You got to build housing so that there's enough housing for everyone. So all sorts of housing needs to be built. We need to build low-end housing, low-income housing. We need to build high-income housing so that people, and we need to build middle-income housing so that people can move from different types of housing. So we need to build more housing. And how do you build more housing? We need more housing in our city. So how do you build more housing? Well, you need to attract investment in our city. And how do you attract investment to a city to create more housing? Well, you need to change the zoning laws so that it makes it easier for people to build low-income, median-income, and high-income housing. That's probably the best answer to this situation, is build more housing. And when you build more housing, there'll be more units available. And when there's more units available, then we won't be in a crisis situation where we're below 5% housing. So building housing is really the answer to our housing crisis. We need to build more housing for people. So how do you do that? Well, you have to get investment in our city. How do you get investment in our city? Our zoning codes need to be changed so that investors will come in. Our building codes need to be changed so that people can build buildings that will house other people. We should give incentives for people to become landlords, like myself. Build an apartment in your garage. Here's an incentive for that. Build an apartment in your basement. Here's an incentive for that. More housing. And when there's more housing, the rents will naturally come down because there'll be 10% empty housing or whatever the number is, that sweet spot that we're looking for. Now we're in a crisis. And, when you're in a crisis, the government should help out. So the people who are feeling this pinch, this crisis, maybe they should get, a tax credit for that period of time where they're feeling that credit. Maybe, a 15% rent increase is too much. So we have to help these people. And we do. We help people when there's disasters. We help people when there's crisis. And that's what government does, and that's what we do as a community. And we should do that for these people. But the real answer is not, that's not a long-term answer. The long-term answer is to build housing. Because if you don't have enough housing, you're still going to have the issue. People are going to still want to come to our beautiful city, and they're going to want to live here. No housing? What are they going to do? They're going to try to force their way into housing somehow. They're either going to pay more exorbitant prices, or they're going to try to get around the system. If there was enough housing, if we built enough housing, then that system would work naturally. And then house prices would become maybe more affordable because we have enough housing and there's not a crisis any longer. That's what probably is the best answer to this situation. Give young families an incentive to buy a home. Get out of an apartment. Give them an incentive. Give them a tax break to buy a new home for them and themselves. They will free up an apartment for other people who need that apartment, for people with maybe a lower income now, who are starting out. We need to incentivize people. We need to give them an incentive to buy homes, build new spaces. We can't go the other way. The answer is to give people opportunities, not take them away. Okay? So that's the real answer here, I think, to housing. You need to have a home buyer incentive. Create homes, new homes. Let people do that. And we also need to, when people when their families grow up and people move out, we also need to have housing for the elderly so they can downsize and live on the money that they have saved through their lives. So we need more housing. We need all this housing to be able to do this, to make this happen naturally. Now, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that, instead of helping landlords, instead of helping me build an apartment in my home, instead of helping people move out, the opposite of that is to say, okay, landlords, we're going to cap it. We're going to put a cap on what you can make. So where's the incentive to build for those people? They lose that incentive. It's the opposite of giving people an incentive. Okay, developers, you want to come to our city? Well, if you do, we're going to minimize your profits. Well, what does that do? That doesn't bring developers into our city. That does the opposite. It keeps developers away from our city. It lowers the amount of units in our city, which then exasperates the problem that we're having already, the crisis we're having already. So in the short run, it sounds like rent control, stabilization is a good thing for people, and it is. It helps those people to stay in their homes. It's a good thing for those people. And we can help those people in other ways through tax incentives and aid for those people who are in desperate need. We can do that. We can do that as a council. We can help these people. We can say, hey, we're going to lower your taxes because we see you're in a problem here. We see that this landlord has raised your taxes incredibly, so now we're going to help you. There's a program. Please sign up for it, and we will help you. We'll help you stay in your apartment. Okay? But we can't at the same time discourage development, so we have to do both. We have to encourage development by giving developers a reason to come to our town. We have to build more housing. Obviously, we're in a crisis, and that crisis doesn't seem to be getting any less. We have to give people incentive to move on with their lives, to build a house, to move to a different apartment, to move to a bigger space for them and their families. These are incentives we need to give people. We don't need to give people an incentive to stay in the same apartment for as long as they possibly can because the rent is controlled. That's the opposite of what you need. You need to free up these apartments. You need to keep them moving. You need people to be able to move into these lower income apartments, get themselves settled, get themselves moving up and maybe into a home. This is what really needs to happen. So building apartments, building units is really what needs to happen. Rent control and rent stabilization, to me, seems like the opposite of that. It doesn't give developers incentives. It gives them a reason not to come to our town. It doesn't give young families an incentive to move out. It makes them stay where they are because it's cheaper. It doesn't give people who are now in their lives, their family has moved out and they don't need as much space. It doesn't give them an incentive to move because this is the cheapest spot they can find, or maybe they don't want to downsize because of that. So the process doesn't work. It doesn't work. What we need to do is give people reason to build apartments, build homes. Rent stabilization does exactly the opposite. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. On a question, excuse me, Alderman Childress.
President, well, I largely agree with what Alderman O'Reilly says. We do need more development. We do need more units. We do need more affordable units, more middle-income units.
More higher.
And it would be great if we could bring developers here right off the bat to get that done. It's not an easy thing to do. If it were, we would have done it a long time ago. We've known for well over 10 years that we have to have more housing at the affordable level and the middle income level. Not a secret to us. But there are two sides here. There are property owners and there are renters. And we have a difficult situation in the United States because, on the one hand, a lot of us believe that housing is a human right. We don't like the idea that there are people who are homeless when they choose not to be. Our hearts go out to them, and we want to find some kind of solution for those folks who are having trouble finding housing. So we do want to make sure that property owners are incentivized to do the right thing. But we also want to protect those people who are renters. We especially want to protect those people who are on fixed incomes. We especially want to protect those people who are at the low end of our economic status. There is nothing in this resolution tonight that will go against anything that Alderman O'Reilly mentioned. This is, in fact, simply giving us one tool out of many that we can use to address the housing situation here in Kingston. The resolution simply supports state law that would expand current laws that only relate to our 5 downstate counties at the moment. So in voting for this, all we're doing is saying to our state representatives, we encourage you to give us another tool. We don't have to use it, but we'd like to know that it's there. It may happen that our economy turns down. Lord knows, just looking at the stock market in the last couple days, things can get kind of topsy-turvy under the current administration. So we want to be prepared. We'd like to have the tool to use it if we need it. And that's what rent stabilization is. It's a tool that's to be used only in times of emergency. It's not something we would simply impose on landlords because we want to limit them. We know, too, that there have been some programs of rent control that have not worked so well. We're not talking about those programs. If we ever looked into this possibility, we would look at a flexible program. We would look at one that worked well for everybody involved. We would take testimony from everybody involved. And the first thing we would do would be to try to bring folks together before we went to legislation. But sometimes you need that legislation in your back pocket in order to negotiate. So I am firmly behind this resolution because I believe it will help our state elected officials understand that we want to have all the possible tools at our disposal so we can do the work of the heart and take care of everyone in our community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Worthington.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to say that the Common Council is not ignorant to the fact that there is, as Alderman O'Reilly has just mentioned, that there is a housing crisis in Kingston. This is why the Common Council is holding housing forums. Now, this memorial resolution, as Alderman Scott Childress said, is going to allow us and ensure us to be able to establish some kind of rules or regulations, give us an option to even address the problem. Both of my co-aldermen said that it is an emergency that's going on, that it is a housing crisis. I don't think anybody up here can say that there isn't a housing crisis. We must do something about it. And so if this memorial resolution is going to give us that option and give us that tool to even address it, then we should move forward with it. I'm for incentives for landlords, but I'm also for affordable housing. I think that we can do both at the same time. And we should be able to do both at the same time. And so developers, yeah, it's not that we need to build housing. You're right, we do need to build housing. But we also need to build affordable housing. We've gone to meeting after meeting after meeting and listened to people come in and tell us that they are homeless and tell us that they are having trouble affording these rents that we all know are going up in Kingston. We can't keep ignoring this. We can't. And we're not saying that only let's do affordable housing. We're saying let's do both. We are intelligent people here. We should be able to do both. And so, yes, I will vote for the memorial resolution going forward. And I implore you all to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman O'Reilly. Second time.
We need to build all sorts of housing. And if there's a housing crisis, we need to do things that are going to allow that to happen. We should be talking about changing our zoning. We should be talking about changing our building code so that these houses can be built. We're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about building more houses. Why not? Why aren't we talking about that? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the housing market that exists right now. We're going to stabilize it. Okay? We're going to stabilize the housing market that we have right now. We really need to be talking about getting more homes in this town, building more buildings with homes, letting people become landlords that aren't landlords, that never thought about being a landlord. Give them incentive. Give people incentives to move out of their apartments so other people can move in. That's what we really need to be doing here. I understand that when people are in crisis, they need help. That's what we're here for. We're here to help them, and we're here to give them help through aid, through money, whatever we can do. And maybe, Rita, there's a way besides rent stabilization that we can help these people to stay in their homes, you know? And one way we can do that is by making sure the housing prices don't go up. And if they're going to continue to go up, which rent stabilization is going to do, these people are, in the long run, they're going to be out of a home because we didn't have the foresight to build more homes and give that incentive to build more homes. So I think we're a little short-sighted here in the fact that yes, we're going to help these people today, but when the rents go up, because there's no incentive to build more housing in our town, or people are discouraged from building housing in our town, or people are discouraged from renting their space, you got a bigger problem on down the road. So I think that's going to be a problem. So right now, this is nice to help those people, but in 10 years from now, it might be a worse problem than we have because we didn't build the houses. We didn't give the incentives to build those houses. We actually did the opposite here. So I'm just concerned about that. I'm concerned that this might backfire on us. This might actually backfire on us, and there'll be less homes in our city because we're not looking forward. We're not looking toward the future. We're looking right now. I see that, and we can help those people. We can help those people with aid, just like that's what we could do when there's a hurricane or any other kind of crisis that people are displaced or in trouble of homes. We have places, we have government agencies that are set up for that. We should go forward with that. I'm not saying that these people don't need help. They do need help. I'm saying the way out of this is to build. And how are you going to get people to build? Surely the way you get people to build is by welcoming them, giving them a reason to make a profit in our town, giving them a reason to build. So I think this is a great idea in the short run, but in the long run, it's going to hurt these people that you and I know need the help the most. In the long run, it's going to hurt them. So I think we need to focus on how to help people, really help people, and that's to build more homes and build more homes for these people. And across all economic spectrum, because everybody needs homes. So we need to build low-income housing, middle-income housing, and even high-income housing in this town. And we need to give people incentives to do that, so that there's plenty of housing for everyone. And that's what we really need to do. I think this is the opposite of that, and I think it's going to backfire. And if you look at the statistics, it's backfired in most cities that do it. Most cities that have rent control are in crisis. Cities like Atlanta, who aren't in rent control, they're not in crisis because they allow builders to come in and build. They're building homes. Thousands of people are going there every year to live there because they're building, and they don't have the same crisis that other cities have. So we need to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Shaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do agree that there are always, maybe almost always, many solutions to a problem. So I agree we should talk about them, including some solutions that Alderman O'Reilly has mentioned. But Resolution 90 is one of these solutions, and all it does is opening the door for the conversation. This is about rent stabilization, first of all, and it's just letting us talk about it, letting us decide what we want to do if we want to do it. So if this doesn't happen in New York State, if they don't pass it, then we don't even get the chance to talk about rent stabilization. So I encourage everybody to vote to support this. Thank you.
Alderman Worthington, sure. You get 2 times each.
I just feel like I just need to respond because I feel like he was talking to me. And so with a lot of the things that you've mentioned, you know, I'm in favor of, right? We talked about this before. And excuse me if it seems like we're just having our personal conversation. But I want to echo what Alderman Shaw just said. It is not, we are not making a decision to stabilize rent right now. All we're doing is asking for the opportunity for the door to be open for us to discuss these options. And while we're discussing those options, there may be some options or some choices that you mentioned tonight that we may be able to discuss as well. But if we don't get the opportunity to do it, what's the point? What's the point? You yourself said there is a housing crisis. So correct me if I'm wrong, we need to do something about it now. Looking 10 and 15 years down the road, that's all well and fine, but there is a problem right now that we need to address. And so I think that you're just being a little short-sighted as far as thinking that we're going to try to establish some legislation right now. We're not doing that. All we're asking for is for the door to be open to discuss the options. And so with that, I'm finished, and I'll be voting for the resolution.
All right, thank you. Alderman Carey.
Yeah, you stole a little of my thunder. All I want to say is that this is a fantastic conversation, but we're probably 5 or 6 months or a year ahead of the game here. This has nothing to do with what this is. And again, I'm amazed in my years as an alderman that the memorializing resolutions legislatively are meaningless. They're meaningless legislatively. The county voted them out of even off their agenda at one point, and they brought them back. Yet, the most passionate, the most crazy conversations that I've ever had in here, the ones where this room is packed, where you have the fire marshal here, or the ones that have the most emotional angst, are memorializing resolutions. That just amazes me. I wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Shabbat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have to say, I love my colleagues' passion about this. And I said last night, sometimes it sounds like we're arguing. I agree with a lot of what he says. We do need more housing here. The vote on this memorializing resolution is not about rent stabilization. This is only about giving us the ability to be in on the discussion. And as Mr. Carey said, this was a long ways down the road before we even get to that point. And when we do get to that point, we'll sit around the table as we did last night and discuss this. This has nothing to do with enacting any kind of rent controls or rent stabilizations or anything else. This just allows us the opportunity to be involved in these conversations when it comes, we don't even know what's going to pass, the legislation is going to pass to begin with. If it doesn't, it's a moot point. If it does, then we can begin discussions on how we feel about this. You know, I think this discussion, as Alderman Carey said, is a little premature. You know, we don't know how this is going to play out. We're just saying we're supporting the idea of giving Kingston a voice in this. Thank you.
Pat, you only get 2 times to speak. I'm sorry, buddy. Alderman Coop.
Thank you. The resolution.
Bend the rules. Give them a chance to close.
The resolution reads, we're calling upon our leaders to strike the geographical restrictions from the ETPA so that local governments can take an active role in addressing the cost of rental housing. It gives us another arrow in our quiver, so to speak, that we can use if we so choose. I think it's a good resolution. It doesn't mean we're getting into the rent stabilization program. It just allows us to act if we think it's necessary. I will vote for the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I call for the vote, other than Pat? Alderman Davis.
Yes, passion here, passion. Both sides have good points. You know, Pat talks about wanting changes, building homes, changes to the zoning planning board, zoning changes, planning changes. We definitely need that, and we have to address it. But we also need changes to the way we protect the tenants, right? This is changing, like everybody, as many people have mentioned. It doesn't say that we're going to put rent stabilization, but it changes how many counties can actually even have this discussion. And it's only, as it says here, it's only 8 of the state's 62 counties. So this is for a change that Ulster County can have a discussion about this and sit down at the table and talk about it. It's going to be a change, as I stated earlier, change for the protection of the tenants. We can have a discussion that a tenant shouldn't have to fear that at any time their rent can go up X amount of dollars, all right? You know, thousands of dollars all of a sudden in 1 month while your things are gonna go up, or that you're evicted right away. We need changes to the way landlords can do things, right? That they can come in and, you know, and look at the apartment, and the notification need changes to how long they have to give for people to eviction. These are all things that are coming out during these housing forums that we're having. But as I see this memorial resolution, and it's a change. And as you were stating earlier, we need changes to the zoning planning board for people to want to come in here and do business, and they don't have to go through all these loops and everything else and be discouraged from building homes. But we also need changes to be able to have the discussion about, is this something that we want to implement in Kingston or Ulster County, or is it something not? Is it parts of it that we want to? But we need, again, as someone stated, you know, always making a change, always making these difficult changes or things is not always easy, all right? But if we never talked or never made changes, we might not have some of the stuff that we take for granted now in the city of Kingston, in the world, right? As we mentioned before, if there was no changes to discussion about the civil rights movement, I might not be sitting here in front of you guys as an alderman, all right? So, you know, these are difficult things, but I think these are things that we need to talk about, but we need changes all over, all around, for building homes, but also for protecting the rights of the tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, the last alderman. Alderman Morrell.
I just wanted to quickly point out that we are having conversations about zoning changes also. There is a zoning task force that has been established. I am the Common Council liaison for it, and I'd be willing to share any information about that with anybody who's interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I call for the vote on Resolution 90? Hearing no one else, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted 8-1. Thank you. We now move to resolution number 91.
Resolution 91 of 2019, an ordinance amending an ordinance in relation to traffic on the public streets of the city of Kingston, New York, removing handicap parking on Hunter Street.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 9-0. We now go to resolution number 92.
Resolution 92 of 2019, an ordinance amending an ordinance in relation to traffic on the public streets of the city of Kingston, New York, adding handicap parking on German Street.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted, 9-0. We now move to resolution number 93.
Resolution 93 of 2019, an ordinance amending an ordinance in relation to traffic on the public streets of the city of Kingston, New York, adding handicap parking on Van Dusen Street.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted, 9-0. We now move to resolution number 94.
Resolution 94 of 2019, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, renumbering resolutions 66 of 2019, 32, 33, and 34 of 2018 as per attached.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted, 9-0. That concludes our resolutions for this evening. Alderman Carey.
Yes, Mr. President, I would respectfully ask if we could suspend the rules to address Resolution 95, where we needed to make some changes in the language of a bond ordinance that was previously voted on. Just according to the state, they needed us to clean up some of the language so that it met their guidelines. So I would ask if we could vote to suspend the rules to address resolution number 95.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, on the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote to suspend the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Rules hereby stand yeah. Could you please, do you have the copy of the resolution? Yeah, I do. So just read it. So we're just going to read it.
Resolution 95 of 2019, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the amendment and adoption of a bond ordinance for the Midtown Parking Lots Improvement Project.
On the question? Well, since we don't have a committee report, we need a motion and a second. So can I get a motion? Second?
Second it.
Okay, so we're going to, on the question, no discussion. I'm going to call for the vote for the changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted, 9-0. We also have a bond ordinance here. Are you aware of that, Doug?
That's linked to, I believe it's linked to 90.
Okay.
I just see it here now for the first time.
Okay, so I guess we'll call for a vote for that also. You want to just read it, just so they know?
A mandatory bond ordinance dated May 7th, 2019. An ordinance amending the bond ordinance dated May 7th, 2019, duly adopted by the Common Council of the City of Kingston, Ulster County, New York, authorizing design and construction costs in connection with the Midtown Parking Lots Improvement Project in and said for said city.
So that's the changes, or? Okay. So that's the amended resolution ordinance, so. Any questions before I call for the vote? No? Okay, so I'm going to call for the vote. No, it's authorization, it's not the bond itself.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted, 9-0. We're back in order. So before I ask for a motion to adjourn, is there anyone who would have something to say? Alderman Childress, and then Alderman Carey.
Before I get to the item at hand, I would like to thank Kyle McIntosh. He's put a lot of work into developing the new sound system here, and it seems to have worked way better than what we're used to. So kudos to Kyle for taking care of this. What? That's your own. You need a hearing aid. On the serious side, I would like to note the passing of Elaine G. Levine. She was 89 years old and lived at Golden Hill Nursing Home. She was born in the Bronx and was the daughter of the late Isidore and Helen Friedman Greenberg. She was a 1951 graduate of Mount Sinai Nursing School, and she worked as a registered nurse in the operating and emergency rooms and in private duty at Kingston and Benedictine hospitals. She was also the manager of Tri-Cities Nursing Agency and a volunteer with Big Brother, Big Sister, and worked at hospice. She's survived by 4 children, including Amy Peterson, who works here in the building. So I hope everyone will extend their condolences to Amy next time they see her. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Carey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to close in memory of Catherine K. Yapel of Kingston, who passed away. Actually, it was in March. I didn't get this done in April, so I'm going to do it today. She was born in September 17th, 1928, to the late John and Elizabeth Acker. She was one of 10 children. Kay was a Kingston High School graduate, class of 46. Later married Fred Yapel, who had previously passed before her. She worked many years at Hercules, Irico, and Port Ewan until her retirement. She was very active in the Redeemer Evangelical Lutheran Church, where she volunteered in the church office, served on the church council, was assisting and Eucharistic minister, lector, assistant treasurer, greeter, and usher. She was a member of the Kingston Republican Club, Republican Party, and was elected as a first alderwoman, 1980 to 1984, first ward alderwoman, I should say, 1980 to 84 in the city of Kingston. She was an avid bowler and enjoyed family beach vacations and cruising. She's survived by her children, Kathy Levecki, Wayne Yapel, Peter Yapel, Fred Yapel, as well as 8 grandchildren, and a son previously passed, Jerry Yapel, as well. She's also my brother-in-law's mother as well, so for what that's worth. But her contribution to the city and church will outlive her by many years, and she will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Davis.
No obituary, but I just, as Rennie stated, I just want to go on record as thanking Kyle McIntosh, and once I threw the ball to him to get this all started working well. So I want to thank Kyle, and Kyle also stated that Brian Waltman was a great contributor to getting this our new audio system. So I just want to go on record as thanking them both. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I want to also close in the memory of Catherine E. K. Samansky. She happened to be 92, lifelong resident of the city of Kingston. Actually, she lived on Samansky Street. I've always wanted to live on a street named after me, but I think I might have to wait a while. But she was the daughter of the late Solomon Rose Tierney Wells. She met her husband, John Samansky, while working at Forest Packing Company, and later their daughter, Judy, was born. She spent many happy years working for Brown's Florist. These are all older businesses I kind of remember, so I must be getting old. She was very devoted churchgoer to Immaculate Conception, where she was active in several clubs and the choir, and she enjoyed spending any time she had with her grandchildren. Kay was a very selfless, nurturing, lovable, and giving person. Oh, well, keep her in your prayers. Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no one else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We hereby stand adjourned until the next regular scheduled meeting. Thank you very much.
Oh my God. Doing all the speaking. What?
Last month, remember you had a question and I said 21% feet from the corner? You guys voted on that last week. You had it on your agenda.
Yeah, we did.
I don't think it was a problem. I mean, I told you what's the thing. It was. All right. Okay. All right. I didn't get that on audio. Just reiterate your points. All right. All right. Resolution. That's what I thought. But I'm glad you told me. All right. Thank you. How'd you feel getting up and talking? All right. So you're going to get to it. You're going to make sure it goes properly. So.